The Memphis Grizzlies are currently in Los Angeles. Saturday night, under the brightest of lights, Dillon Brooks crapped the bed. There's no real other way to describe it. I'm a little bit fired up about that. I know I've only got 30 minutes or so woosah, rubbing the ears, calming myself down. We have a lot to discuss. Damichael Cole is there in Los Angeles following the Grizzlies. It's game 4 tonight. We're going to look back at game 3, look ahead to Memphis trying to save their season. Next, here on Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. It is a Monday edition of the podcast, and Damichael Cole is here with me. I'll bring him back into the show together. Obviously, he hosted the special weekend edition of the podcast, but we're back together for this Monday episode, and we're excited to have you with us wherever you're listening, however you take in the podcast, however you're watching on YouTube, liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing, all those fun things. It is appreciated. We are proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by PrizePicks. Today's episode, again, brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. Forgive me if I seem a bit frazzled. I promise I'm not frazzled. I'm jazzed up. I have a lot of emotions. We have so much to discuss in only a finite amount of time. And for those of you that have followed my work going back to when I was running Grizzly Bear Blues and GBB Live, when I was the host of that podcast, I created that podcast. I can ramble if you let me. But Damichael Cole is actually there in Los Angeles as the beat writer for the Memphis Grizzlies as part of the commercial appeal. So I will do my best to be as professional as I can be and continue to allow Damichael Cole to steer the ship, because he's the guy that actually talked to Dillon Brooks on Sunday at the makeshift film session practice that wasn't going to happen. But when you score 9 points in a quarter of a basketball game at any level, at the high school level, these dudes would have been in film the next day. They are professional basketball players. They made tens of thousands of dollars to score 9 points in a 12-minute frame of professional basketball. Damichael Cole, God bless you. I hope you got a bonus from the commercial appeal, because that was ugly to watch in game 3.
It was bad. It was bad. And what made it so bad was the hype, right?
Oh, my God.
It was built up like the heavyweight, Tyson Holyfield, then before the game, just watching the crowd. Dillon Brooks is a villain everywhere. He gets booed everywhere. That's no surprise. But I'm watching the crowd, literally, Joe. I hadn't really seen it to this level before. Every missed shot during warm-ups, they're reacting. As
they hated him so much.
Every single shot, Joe. It's the crowd reacting. And then his name. Every time the PA announcer says his name, it's loud boos and fans everywhere. I mean, anytime Dillon Brooks picked up a foul, shot a shot. Oh, when he missed shots, it went. You would think the Lakers just had an alley-oop.
That happened a lot.
Yeah, and it happened a bunch of times, all right. But all that to say is, Dillon Brooks had the chance to really take this whole villain thing to a whole new level, and kind of shush the LA crowd that has been, quite frankly, hungry for this game, right? Crypto.com arena, we haven't seen the Lakers play a playoff game, in that environment in a couple years. They were waiting on this, and Dillon calls out LeBron, and Dillon basically played one half of basketball. And in that one half, it's probably good he played one half, because the numbers probably would have gotten even worse. I think it was 3 of 13, 7 points, flagrant 2 ejection, but it wasn't pretty. I tell you what, he should be looking forward to game 4 as much as anyone.
I'm going to preface this because we're going to talk throughout the show about other aspects of game 3. Obviously, the Grizzlies lose to the Lakers. We're going to preview game 4 towards the end of the program. So stay with us. And again, There's so much I want to say. Everybody except for one person, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, stunk against the Los Angeles Lakers in Game 3. Everybody. Jaren Jackson Jr. had his worst game of the series. Desmond Bane continues to struggle. This is not going to be beating up on Dillon Brooks because he stunk. That's not what this is. And I wrote about it over at Bluff City Media on Sunday morning. It's growing up on Dillon Brooks and growing apart.
Yep.
And I made the declaration of I'm over it. I'm done.
No.
If you've been following,
not contract extension, Joe Mullinax.
I'm done. Wow. In a 96-hour time period, because Damichael's exactly right. If you've been following us this season, you know I was going to give this dude 4-year, $80 million. And Damichael Cole, in all his genius, sat there politely, kindly, as he does. I love Damichael very much. He goes, "Now, Joe, are you sure?" "Yeah, I don't know. 4 years, $80 million. And I was like, he's the heart and soul. He's the guy that they all count on. On and on I went. 96 hours later, I'm done.
Wow.
Because here's why. And Damichael, we talked a little bit about it before the show.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm done has nothing to do with how he played. Because again, they all stunk except for Ja Morant. All of them did. And I would say even Xavier Tillman played a little bit. He definitely defended LeBron James better than Dillon Brooks did. So it's not even that. It's not even the fact that he went at the king and missed terribly, wide left, right?
Yeah.
It is the fact that at the end of the game, when Tim McMahon and you, and whether it's national reporters or local reporters, everybody goes straight to Dillon Brooks' locker, understandably so, and he's asked to comment, and he's like, "Nope, no comment. I'm good tonight."
Yeah.
Dude, everything that you were in my eyes, that heart and soul, the braggadocious, audacious, the one I'm on the wall, you need me on that wall, all that you were is gone in that moment. Yeah. Because I know that you're full of it. Because you were in a position where you could have said, "It's on me." Because you were the leader. I believed it. I believed that you were the leader, Dillon Brooks. And it was your chance to say it's my fault, even though it's not. Because that's leadership. That's leadership.
Joe, I don't think the people understand how mind-blowing this is coming from you. You've been on the Dillon Brooks train. When everyone was giving him flack, Joe, you were right there. You were right there. And it does feel like that game was a turning point. And I myself, I've never been one, against Dillon Brooks because I have always said his wing defense is essential to, the success of this team. We can debate the shooting and all that stuff all day, but
and for them to win Game 4, they still need him.
That's the wild part about it, right? If you want to win Game 4, you're gonna need a good Dillon Brooks, likely to do that. So it's not surprising because I will say this, Joe. What you're saying, I think we can say that is reflective of a decent part of what I've heard, at least over the last couple of days, from the fan base through just conversations with people, through emails, through DMs, all of that. It's very reflective of, I think, what I've heard. It's just the fact that people have, gone to bat for Dillon Brooks. And his comments in the locker room calling LeBron James old and all those things had the fan base hype. And
Absolutely.
For the absolute letdown, and again, we're going to focus more on the letdown of the Grizzlies because it wasn't just Dillon Brooks. And Dillon Brooks, talking to him on Sunday, he was asked, Joe, one of the questions that he was asked on Sunday was about the fact that did he think his comments put the team in a bad position? And Joe, he said, "No, I've been talking all year," which I think is very fair. A lot of people who haven't been following the Grizzlies up to this point, they think, Dillon Brooks just woke up in March when Ja Morant got in trouble and just became this villain out of nowhere. But he said, "I've been talking all year." He said, "We just didn't make shots at the beginning of the game. We weren't following the game plan at the beginning of the game, and we were letting them do what they do. Get in transition and rebounding the basketball on the offensive end." Two things we've talked about a ton, Joe. Mm-hmm. Transition. I mean, we saw how quickly the Lakers were getting to where they wanted to get to, scoring the basketball and the offensive rebound. Dillon Brooks missed a whole bunch of shots that allowed that to happen. Yes, that did happen, but it wasn't solely him. But the fact that he got those open looks, 0 for 4 3-pointers, I think in the first quarter, but he started 0 for 4 for shoot. I think he finished 1 for 5. It wasn't the best look after you poke the bear, as he said. He poked the bear and he was not ready to respond. So I'll tell you what, I'll leave it at this, show. I'm not completely, to the point where I say, yeah, Dillon Brooks, you just completely embarrassed yourself. It's over. He can respond. But I feel like if he doesn't in game 4, it's not going to matter. But game 4, you have to respond, Dillon Brooks. It's that simple. You got to show, okay, yeah, he got the best of me that game, but guess what? I've been playing in the league for 6 years too, and I'm an all-league defender. So let me show you what I bring to the table. He has to respond. If he doesn't respond in this game, then it looks like he's just a guy that's out there talking with no precedent behind what he's saying.
For me, you're right. And again, think back to the 2021 Utah Jazz series, right, where Dillon Brooks averaged almost 26 points a game on 51% shooting across those 5 games. Dillon was one of the hottest hands in the entire league in terms of shooting the basketball at that time. He could come out and have a good basketball game, and they need him to win. And we'll talk more about keys to game 4 later on in the show. But for me, moving forward, again, because he's still on the team, I would still start him. He still gets all that stuff. He is an important piece of what they're trying to do. When I say I'm done, I'm talking about this summer. Like, this is the summer to figure out who the next key guy next to Bane, Jaren, and Ja is.
It's time to win.
You've got sign and trade possibilities with Dillon. You've got other matching contracts. It is time to win. That time is now. They have to do it this summer. And it's not Dillon for me. It's not. So that's where I'm at. And again, has nothing to do with how he played. Has nothing to do with how he played. It has to do with how he talked. And when he was given a chance to be accountable for it, he chose silence. And that was louder than anything he has ever said, was that silence. We'll talk more about, because again, goodness knows I've been yelling about it. He wasn't the reason they lost. He wasn't. We'll talk about other reasons the Grizzlies lost game 3 next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by PrizePicks, and PrizePicks is doing a pretty impressive special right now as part of the NBA playoffs. I would highly recommend you check out PrizePicks. It is a new $1 million daily Superflex promotion, especially for the NBA playoffs and finals. Every day of the NBA playoffs and obviously eventually the finals, one PrizePicks user will have a chance to become a millionaire. One entry placed after 8 a.m. Eastern time will be randomly selected each day. Whoever placed that entry will be given a 6-pick flex with the following payouts. If you get 6 picks correct, and again, of course, if you remember PrizePicks, you're going against the projections that are given, more or less than a certain amount of points, assists, blocks, whatever it might be. If you get all 6 correct, you win $1 million, Damichael. If you get 5 correct picks, that's $80,000. 4 correct picks is $16K. Full details can be found at prizepicks.com/million. You must opt in at the link to be eligible for the $1 million entry. Once you opt in, all you have to do is play the game like normal, and you could be the lucky winner. And again, there's no competing against other people. It's just you against the projections available. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry with safe and fast entries that are operational in over 30 states as well as in Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by Nissan Aria, and we didn't have much of a chance to talk about this before the show, Damichael, but I think that we're going to agree on who my pick for the most electric player of the week is. It's Ja Morant, who one of the positives of Game 3, maybe the only positive, was his remarkable return to brilliance. A fourth quarter for the ages, 22 points, was electric from 3, explosive at the rim. His game was back to being what we expected him to be. Beautiful, powerful, elegant, all these different kinds of concepts that mesh and mash really well with the duality combination of the Nissan Aria, the perfect SUV crossover. The 2023 Nissan Aria packs pinned you to your seat power and premium intelligence all in one EV. The all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Aria, the EV for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com. Damichael, game 3, we beat up on Dillon a lot, and we're not going to do that in this segment, or at least I won't.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to your thoughts on the Ja Morant game. As bad as 9 points in the first quarter was to watch, as bad as Dillon's antics, the struggles that he had after saying all he said, how good was it? Because you and I have talked about the body language of Ja and how he has not been himself.
Yeah.
For the first time since he came back, he looked like the old Ja. And it looked like an improved version, because it wasn't like he was being demonstrative for the sake of being demonstrative. He wasn't being outlandish because he wanted to be, or, dapping up people on the sidelines or anything like that as he ran down the court. He was dominating the basketball game, the best player on the floor, and he was executing at the highest level that we became accustomed to seeing him do. So how much of that was the team needed him and he just kind of picked up the slack of leadership? How much was it they were down by a lot and he didn't feel much pressure? Or how much was it, okay, Ja Morant's back now and it's a freaking series going into game 4?
Joe, I think we talked a little bit about this, after the game, and I think you were pretty encouraged by Ja's performance. Me, I'm usually the optimistic guy here, but that fourth quarter, it was great, right? 45 points. I'll say it like this, because I don't want to be the Debbie Downer all the way here. I will just say, look, it was great to see Ja get the swagger and the confidence that me and you have been calling for a while. So guess what? Now that he has that 45-point performance in his back pocket, I feel like we're going to see more, getting back more to that aggressive Ja that me and you have been calling for. We said, yeah, of course Jaren's really good. Of course Desmond Bane's real good. But you cannot forget your Ja Morant. That fourth quarter is his reminder of who he is. But with that being said, that fourth quarter, I can't erase the first 3 quarters just because.
Especially the first quarter.
Because, yeah, and the second and the third, even though the Grizzlies won those quarters, my point is the Lakers defense, when they were playing very intense and they were pretty hell-bent on stopping Ja Morant from getting to the basket, they were doing just that. Anthony Davis was right there. LeBron James was rotating over. Jarrett Vanderbilt, all those guys. They did a really good job of forcing. I think we saw Ja Morant take a couple mid-range jumpers and he turned the ball over a few times in the paint, because they did a good job of saying, hey, you ain't coming in here. And if you do, good luck. The fourth quarter, there was a little less resistance. So, yes, he started knocking down the three-pointers, but he was getting to the rim. It was, hey, don't foul him. We're trying to run the timeout. Don't foul him, and don't make it a 3-point play. That's what I got out of that. I want to see it over the course of the full game, because the Lakers defense is pretty good. The Grizzlies defense is really good as well, but the Lakers defense, what they've done really good job of is kind of limiting some of the Grizzlies' best players, and that doesn't exclude Ja. Outside of that fourth quarter, we were still seeing turnovers. We were still seeing him not take some of those shots. And the reason the fourth quarter, the reason I'm kind of, I guess, hesitant on saying, oh, yeah, that's the quarter that, shows the Lakers can't stop him. I won't go that far, because Ja Morant finished the game 6 of 9, I think, on 3-pointers. And he hit, four 3-pointers in the fourth quarter. The thing about that is, you go through the course of this season, when the games are tight, we talked about the clutch moments a lot. When the games are tight, Ja Morant doesn't even shoot 3-pointers like that. He's getting to the basket. He's getting downhill. He is basically hesitant to the point where he's not even shooting the 3-pointers. But in this game, you're down a couple points. It's like, oh, yeah, if I miss it, we're still down 15. If I make it, okay, we're having some fun here. And he started making some, and it was given very much like it's a carefree approach, I think, just because of the game. I want to see it when it's 99-99. Like take that three-pointer then, when the Lakers go under that screen and make them pay. Or are you going to get downhill and go into the pack of the wolves, in the defense? So that's my take on it. Overall, like I said, great to see Ja get back to being who he is, but can he be that person over the course of 4 quarters? That's the next question.
I don't think that this is what you were saying, so I want to preface it with that. I'm just venting a general frustration. When the Grizzlies are doing things well in this series, nationally especially, it's a lot of the Lakers were lazy or the Lakers stopped caring. Yeah. How about the Lakers just are an inconsistent basketball team because they were the 7th seed? I understand they made trades and they were a much better team coming out of it. But watch LeBron James play. Just watch him play. Because the damnedest thing about it, Damichael, is it's not like Dillon Brooks is all that wrong.
He's hurt.
I wish they would let him be the scorer. I wish they would stop doubling and collapsing and stop letting him make these passes to Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura. That's what LeBron wants to do at this stage. Make him be the scorer. Because Dillon's not wrong. Watch him play. Watch Xavier Tillman defend him. Xavier Tillman, who plays center for the Memphis Grizzlies, is able to fairly consistently, not always, because every once in a while LeBron's got a burst.
Yeah.
But fairly consistently is able to check LeBron James. I wish that they could make that adjustment, and that is going to be a major thing to watch going into Game 4. I just think that he is a wonderful model. When LeBron is playing really well, the Lakers look like a title contender. When LeBron is creating turnovers for himself and not closing out on shooters and not doing those things because he's older and because he's hurt, they are not a team that is going to compete to win this series, much less make the NBA Finals. And that is something going into a do or die for the Grizzlies Game 4 we'll talk about next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. This game is addictive. I haven't had a chance to play it as much lately because we're in the grind of the NBA playoffs, but it's the coolest game I've played in a long time. I always thought I could be a great NBA GM, and as it turns out, it's not all that easy. This game allows for you to manage every strategic aspect of a franchise. You can play through seasons, lead your franchise and fans to glory as you build a historic dynasty. In the simulation, you're responsible for dealing with personalities, challenging ones like Dillon Brooks, hiring the right coaches and assistants, trading and training players, making draft picks, and navigating your franchise through free agents, the draft, and all the ups and downs of multiple seasons. All this in a challenging and realistic gameplay world. Ultimate Pro Basketball GM is completely free. You can play it offline, play on the go, as you want, when you want to. Locked On Grizzlies listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. Download the game. Just visit probasketballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on the app stores. That's probasketballgm.com. Ultimate Basketball GM. Start your dynasty today. We are previewing Game 4, players that need to step up, things that need to improve in order for the Grizzlies to go back to Memphis for Game 5 with a split and home court back in their pocket. We'll talk that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your co-host, Joe Mullinax of Bluff City Media. You can check out my work at bluffcitymedia.co. You can also check out my co-host work over at the Commercial Appeal. Damichael Cole is the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer. Make sure you're following him on Twitter at Damichael C. Follow me on Twitter at Joe Mullinax. You can follow us here, obviously, on Locked On Grizzlies. Between the two of us, no offense to our colleagues and counterparts across Grizzlies media, I would put us against anybody. And I'm saying that, not Damichael. So Damichael can be humble. I've been doing this for over a decade. So I'm going to confidently say that you're in a good place if you're making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen each and every day. And first and foremost, it's because of Damichael. He won't say that, but I will. I think that the big thing going into Game 4 to Damichael Cole is the other guys for the Grizzlies. And I don't mean Xavier Tillman. I don't mean even Dillon Brooks. Because, again, Dillon missing shots is not new. This is the worst offensive season of his career. That is not what made me so angry earlier in the show. I'm talking about the other two stars. Jaren Jackson Jr. had his worst game of the series by far. Foul trouble, silly fouls, ticky-tack fouls, things that he just can't afford to do as that key two-way player for this team. Desmond Bane continues to have issues shooting the basketball, finding a rhythm. Austin Reeves, it seems like, is blocking a shot on the perimeter every game.
Yeah.
And then when poor Desmond Bane tries to get to the rim, it seems like Anthony Davis, I think Davis has 15 blocks in the series so far or something crazy like that. It feels like 7 of them are on Bane. So I think that if Memphis is going to win game 4, and I, for the record, am picking them to win game 4, I think it goes back 2-2 to Memphis. It's going to have to be because of Jaren and Bane. For the reasons that you alluded to earlier in the show about Ja, I don't think you were hating on Ja. I think you were being realistic. Morant can score 28, 30, 32 points consistently. That is what he's capable of. He's not going to do the 3-point shooting the way that he got there in game 3 is not going to happen again. He needs Bane. He needs Jaren. It needs to be a night where the 3 of them combine for something like 75 points. That's possible. They haven't done it consistently enough. If they are capable of doing that, the Lakers do not have the firepower to match that output. That's crazy to say out loud, but look at their roster. It's true. They need those 2 guys to match the energy that Morant brought in game 3 and be consistent contributors. If they can stay on the floor, if they can score at a high level and be the guys that, especially after this summer when Bane gets his extension, that they're paid to be, now we're talking that it's going to be a competitive game or even a Grizzlies lead going into the fourth quarter. Assuming Ja does what he's been doing, at least what he did in game 3, it's on Bane and Jaren for me for this to be a win for Memphis.
And I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong by saying it's on Dez and Jaren to be better because they are the ones, Jaren is already paid on that level, and Desmond Bane will be paid this summer very, very well. So those are the 2 guys that should be playing up to that level. But what about everyone else? Let's just dive into it because, quite frankly, the Grizzlies have not had enough of their role players step up in the postseason, whereas the Lakers have had big performances from Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, and D'Angelo Russell, and I think it was game 1 when he had 19 points as well. The Grizzlies haven't had that. Xavier Tillman had the one great game. Game 1, he was pretty non-existent. Game 3 here, 6 points, 12 rebounds. He was great on the glass over the course of the game. But again, first quarter, Grizzlies were dominated. So I don't put too much stock in that. The rest of the starting lineup, Dillon Brooks, we've already talked a lot about him. I don't have to say too much there. 7 points, 3 of 13 shooting, 1 of 5 on 3-pointers. That's that. What about the bench? You got nothing from the bench. You haven't got anything from the bench, quite frankly, for the most part of this series. Your guy, Luke Kennard. Start there. That's your guy. That's your guy, Joe.
It is my guy.
If I would have told you before the game, Joe, if I would have said 25 minutes played off the bench, 4 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 0 of 1 3-point shooting, I will be willing to bet. I know which guy's name you would have said, and it would have been Luke Kennard. You know who?
John Conchar.
It would have been John Conchar. That's whose stat line you would have thought that was. And speaking of John Conchar, no points, 4 rebounds, 0 of 1 as well from 3-point range in 9 minutes. Santi Aldama came out, made 2 3-pointers early in the game, and those were the only 2 shots he made. 2 of 7.
Is terrible defensively.
Defensively,
he is the worst player on the team defensively right now.
This is not the series for him defensively.
No.
This team, the Lakers, Rui, very strong guy. LeBron James has bully balled him some. Anthony Davis, he stands no chance. All those guys, and I remember before the season, Santi talked to me and he said getting stronger was the thing that he wanted to work on the most. And I think we saw why. we are seeing why, present tense, because I don't think it's over. But Tyus Jones, this is your point guard. No points, 0 of 7 shooting, 0 of 5 on 3-pointers. You got nothing from one of the highest paid backup point guards in the NBA. So basically the bench numbers read like this: 4 points, Luke Kennard, nothing from Tyus Jones, 2 points from David Roddy, 6 points from Santi Aldama, 0 points from John Conchar. 2 guys put up donuts. 1 guy had 2 points. The other 2 guys had 6 and 4. You got 12 points from 5 guys. You're not going to beat anyone like that.
No, you're not. And I think that's a very fair point, especially on Luke Kennard, because you're exactly right. That's very much my guy. I like to take victory laps wherever I can on Luke Kennard. This is not that time. Kennard needs to wake up, and it's not all on the coaches. It's not all on Ja or anybody else not making the pass. He's got to shoot the freaking basketball. Like, you're being defended. It's not like they're doubling him. It's not like they're being they've got D'Angelo Russell on him at times. They've got guys that Kennard should be able to get open against. And for whatever reason, whether he doesn't want to.
Can I counter that?
Yeah, sure.
Because I'll say this. I'm looking at it, Joe, and it doesn't look like he can get open.
Yeah, that's concerning in and of itself.
That's
not prioritizing him.
Yeah.
I don't see it. Maybe my eyes are off. But I've watched multiple possessions where it's just him against D'Angelo Russell, and he's not able to get open.
Yeah, I agree. And there are a couple possessions where, you go back and watch the film, he was open in a corner or something, and the guys could have swung the ball.
But he has to get himself open sometimes.
He has
to be physical through screens.
We've talked about that a lot. And just seeing it, anytime he catches the ball, does one dribble, they're like shadows on Luke Kennard in this series. Dennis Schroeder is one of the best, I think, in the league when it comes to chasing shooters and staying attached. He's great at that. He's all over Luke Kennard. And this series, I'll say this. There's a difference between shooters in the NBA. You have your Duncan Robinsons and Luke Kennards. In theory, when they're wide open, they're some of the best shooters in the league. But this is why there's a difference between the Desmond Bains and the Luke Kennards of the world. It's just being honest. This is why Desmond Bain is a guy who averages 20-plus points on 40% three-point shooting, because he can create shots better. He has the step backs and he has, all these moves in his arsenal to get his three-point shot. Luke Kennard basically has to have, something drawn up for him, or as we seen earlier this season with the Grizzlies, he had a lot of threes in transition and in all those situations. But he has that. He quite frankly needs a bigger bag in this series.
No, you're exactly right. I can't dispute that. Unfortunately, I really want to, because I love Luke Kennard so much, but he is not holding up his end of the bargain, and he's doing too much when he is dribbling and trying to create on the dribble or off the dribble. He just doesn't have the same bag, to use your terminology, that Desmond Bain does. He just doesn't have it. You're exactly right. Well, hopefully, as if you couldn't tell from our analysis here, everybody needs to play better except for Ja Morant. And it kind of is that simple going into Game 4 for the Memphis Grizzlies. Again, if they go back to Memphis down 3-1, I think most folks will still pick the Grizzlies to win Game 5. But down 3-1, running off 3 straight wins against LeBron James, that feels like a tall order. This is an extremely important contest for the Memphis Grizzlies.
And that's the funny part about it. We did all this talking about how this team needs to improve. And lo and behold, we both think that they will win Game 4.
Yes.
So it's clear. We still think they are in position to win this next game. But as you see, there need to be some changes. Some things need to be different in order for that to happen.
Yes, and hopefully a heck of a lot faster start. You can't start any slower than what the Memphis Grizzlies did in Game 3. So hopefully they get out of sloth mode and they re-engage and have a much better beginning to Game 4. Thank you so much for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today and every day. We are proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network. We appreciate our everydayers, folks that are there with us, whether it's on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts each and every day. Thank you so much for checking us out and making us pieces of your NBA playoff consumption of content. For the Tuesday episode of Locked On Grizzlies, obviously there will be somebody here talking to you. It will depend on how able I am to stay awake. On the East Coast, these 10 p.m. tips kill me. It'll either be myself or Damichael talking to you on our Tuesday edition. And then for our Wednesday show, going into Game 5, Damichael and I are very excited. We're going to have Howard Beck, who is a member of the Locked On Podcast Network, of Zach Lowe podcast fame and elsewhere, of course, one of the better NBA covering journalists in the stratosphere that is NBA journalism. He is going to be with us on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. So we have some good stuff for you heading into the guaranteed Game 5. Again, regardless of what happens tonight, the Grizzlies have another game. So this is not the end of the season, but it is a major piece. If Memphis wins Game 4, they get home court back. They have 3 games to win 2, and 2 of those 3 games will be in Memphis, where they were the best home court team in the entire NBA this year. If they lose this one, it's 3-1, do or die Game 5, again, where I think Memphis will still be favored, but to knock off Anthony Davis and LeBron James 3 times in a row feels like a lofty order. So this is an important game tonight, and we'll talk about the results of Game 4, good or bad, on our next edition of Locked On Grizzlies. For Damichael Cole, my wonderful co-host, who is working his tail off out in Los Angeles. Again, follow his work over at the Commercial Appeal. If you don't already do so, you most certainly should. I am Joe Mullinax. We will catch you on Tuesday. Until then, stay locked in. This is Locked On Grizzlies.